A book so good. Oh, see, when I read campfire songs, I hear Should Have Been a Cowboy.
Singing those campfire songs. Oh, I should have been a cowboy.
Hey, it's Megan.
And Sue in the restricted section.
And today we are going to be doing the Campfire book tag.
Yes, and we were tagged by Sam from Sarcasm and Sci-Fi.
And the original video was by Jaded Reader.
You wrote down. I didn't.
I was actually prepared.
Woo, I'm not. We'll link both of those videos
Down below.
We tried to get a campfire vibe going on. Did it work?
Does it look campfire-y? I just have a really cool lamp from IKEA that I feel like worked.
It's not fall yet, but
it's getting close.
They just put out the pumpkin beers.
Yeah, they did.
And so I got this O'Fallon vanilla pumpkin beer, which I don't think I've had this one.
I haven't had this one.
So I thought I'd try it, but I'm excited because I like pumpkin beer. And
I love
O'Fallon
pumpkin beer.
makes a good pumpkin beer, so
Yeah,
hopefully this vanilla one is good. And
So
I
fun.
think, like, camping makes me think of autumn, so
Same.
I felt pumpkin beer kind of went with this too.
It worked.
Let's try it.
Oh, man.
Oh, that's so good.
Oh, man.
You know what it kind of tastes like? Is that like pumpkin fluff dip?
Oh, it totally
that's like
does.
pumpkin mixed with whipped cream and stuff. Oh man, that's good.
Fuck me, that's delicious.
So the first question is build the tent. A book you had to read that ended up being a drag.
And of course, I said The Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck. I was trying to think of another like assigned book I had to read that was a drag, but that would be like throwing it way back to high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I had to read The Grapes of Wrath in high school.
yes, same. But I couldn't think of any other books from high school because like I didn't have to read any
I see.
books like that in college because I was a counseling major. So like
Right.
all the books I had to read were, you know, counseling related. But yeah, Grapes of Wrath sucked ass. I liked it.
I said The Alienist by Caleb Carr because I had to read that because we chose it for our book club.
Mm-hmm.
And the first half of it was pretty good, but then I just like didn't give any fucks anymore, and I
Solve
just
the
was ready
case.
for it to be over. So
Fuck
the
me.
second half was rough.
Yep. Also, we camped a lot when I was a kid, and we used to like camp in a tent, and then my family bought a camper, so then they would camp in the camper and I would camp in my tent because I like tent camping.
Right.
And setting up the tent was like the most miserable part of the camping trip because my mom would always, without fail, get really pissed off at my stepdad because my stepdad is not great at that kind of stuff, and so she would be like drowning in tent poles, and he would be there with like a hammer, which was useless at that point, like, and so it was always the worst part.
We never went camping because we lived in the woods anyway.
So did we, but we still went camping. Yeah.
Sometimes me and Stacy would say we were going to camp. We didn't own a tent even.
Oh, really?
But sometimes me and Stacy would say we were going to camp in the yard, and we never did it. But yeah, we'd still roast weenies and stuff though when we'd burn brush.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we'd have a big brush fire and
roast.
go get some wieners and some marshmallows.
Sounds good to me. The second question is build a fire, a book you were proud of finishing.
I said the motherfucking Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. I buddy read this with Jessica and Christina from Game of Tomes, and I think all three were pretty proud of ourselves for reading this. I feel like we got some nerd cred there.
Real talk.
And we all three really enjoyed it, so that was a bonus.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was one that again had been sitting on my shelf for fucking ever, and I just needed someone to read it with me.
It was time
to do it.
I said 1 Second After by Bill Forskin. Because William Forshin. That book sucked. It was so bad, and it was very like conservative values, white Christian America equals thebomb.com, And I was really proud that I didn't DNF it because there were so many times.
You should have.
I really probably should have, but like there were times I wanted to be like, bye, fuck this book, I'm out. But I didn't. I saw it through, and it was miserable.
Next is Roasted Marshmallow, a mushy, sweet book you couldn't help but devour.
So this book is appropriate both for the mushy sweet and for the devour.
Yeah, it is.
Warm Bodies by Isaac Marion. This is about as warm fuzzy as I like to get, and also zombies. So you know,
warm fuzzy plus
devour. Gross, creepy,
kind of scary.
Yeah, that's how I like it. So
I went a different direction, and I said Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I really loved this. I feel like it's kind of polarizing, like people either love it or they hate it, but I saw a lot of parallels with like my experience starting college and Kath's experience starting college. I didn't quite realize how much social anxiety I had until I read this and read things that she was doing that were clearly supposed to be kind of ridiculous. That I was like, I did the exact same thing when I was in college, when I lived on campus my first year of college, and I fucking hated living on campus.
Living on campus is the worst.
I hated it. The only good thing was that I could roll out of bed and walk to class. That was the only good thing about living on campus.
Yeah.
Everything else sucked.
Sucked ass.
But yeah, I identified a lot with Kath in this book, and it's also like a sweet love story, and there's also some like deeper shit in there. Her dad has like struggles with his mental health, and so she struggles with that, which also parallels my life. So
yeah. Okay, so number 4 is Gone Fishing, a book that had you hooked by the first chapter.
And I said Wool by Hugh Howey. This one sucked me in pretty quickly, and even though it's a fairly large book, I read it quite quickly, and it's really good. And it's like dystopian book where the earth is no longer habitable, so people live in this big giant silo underground, and then some of them get suspicious that maybe things aren't what they seem. Things aren't what they're being told are.
Yeah.
Real life.
Things.
Words. Yeah.
Words. And I said Parable of the Sower. But yeah, so this book it's kind of like it's like a post-apocalyptic novel. And so it's about this girl who lives in like a gated community post-apocalypse, and like the United States is plunged into like mass poverty and hysteria. I mean, not really hysteria, but like the economy goes to shit and civilization kind of goes to shit. And so she lives in like a gated community, but that kind of comes to an end and she's forced to like strike out on her own. And her father is like a minister, and she kind of disagrees. Well, she does disagree with her dad's ideas of religion and starts to formulate her own. And so it's kind of her story of striking out on her own, both physically away from her home, but then also spiritually. And it is fucking amazing, and it had me hooked. And the second book, it's like a duology, and the second book in this series totally made me cry. And I am not a crier, but it hit me right in my feels. So
I really need to read that.
oh man, it is so good. Like,
I'm like torn between wanting to read all the Octavia Butler at once and wanting to like space it out and savor it.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like I'm gonna read it all at once, but then I'm gonna go back and start over and read it again because like this probably was my second favorite. Like after the Xenogenesis series, I love this the most, and then after that probably Wild Seed.
Next is Skippin' Rocks, a book or series you DNF'd. I almost read your answer. I was like, that's why that didn't sound like an end to it.
DNF.
You DNF'd.
And then I said Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky because I wanted to like it because it seemed like it'd be really cool, but it follows two storylines, like two fairly distinct storylines that will eventually culminate, I imagine. Had I finished the book, I probably would have known that, but one of them I thought was really, really interesting, but the other was not. And I had a really hard time giving a shit about that side of the story. And so on those chapters, it was really hard for me to get through, and I eventually was like, fuck it, because it's a fairly long book as well.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
yeah, I wanted to read it, but I might give it a try sometime.
You should, and let me know if I should just stick it out and read it. Because,
and I had a hard time coming up with an answer for this because I hardly ever DNF things, and I'm pretty sure I have DNF'd something like in the past year or so, but I cannot for the life of me remember what it was because, I mean, obviously it sucked, so
so not super memorable.
I know I DNF'd that Scandalous Secret book.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, I barely got enough into it for it to even matter, but I went with a series that I'm definitely not continuing, and that is the Meg series by Steve Alton. I did not enjoy Meg, and so I have absolutely no desire to read any further in that series.
Campfire Songs. A book so good, you are always found singing its praise.
Oh, guess what? I chose Octavia Butler, and no one was surprised. I chose the Xenogenesis series, aka Lilith Brood. I don't know why they changed it from the Xenogenesis series to Lilith Brood, because Xenogenesis is a cooler name.
Truth.
But I got this copy off eBay for like $10 because I wanted.
It's amazing.
I wanted a copy of it called Xenogenesis. But anyway, yeah, this series is fucking amazing, and I recommend it to anyone all the time.
Yes, everyone.
Even like, oh, you're not into sci-fi? I don't give a fuck.
I don't give a fuck.
Read
this shit.
Read this series.
Now.
Yeah, it's really fucking good.
Not cool with alien sex? Don't give a fuck. Read it.
Read it anyway.
Read it. So I deliberately did not choose Octavia Butler because I feel like all I talk about is Queen Octavia, may she rest in peace. And so I chose instead The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, because I haven't talked about this book in a minute. This book is a gothic treasure, and I love it so much. It's translated from Spanish. I just love it so much.
I really need to read that too.
It takes place in Barcelona. In Barcelona. I was trying to do the Spanish lisp and I overshot. I overshot it. Which I've never been to Barcelona. I've been to Spain, but I was in a very different part of Spain than Barcelona. So I think reading this book makes me want to go to Barcelona because it's a very old city, and just like the descriptions of the city are beautiful because it's an old historic city, and it's very dark, and there are very creepy parts of it, but it's also like kind of a romantic novel. Not necessarily, I mean, there is a romance in it, but I think like beyond that, I think the language describing Spain and describing Barcelona and describing literature in general is very romantic. And I loved it, so you should read it.
That and Parallel of the Sower are on my TBR for this year, so
I'll read that shit.
I'm excited. Next is The Night Sky, a book that made you think deeply about an aspect of the world.
And I said Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty. Death Comes for Us All. And so this book really made me think about kind of what happens when humans die, and it made me think about my own impending death and how I want to handle that, but then also it made me think about the death of my loved ones and how I want to handle that for them, and how like when someone dies, like you have to respect their wishes, but you also have to find a way to grieve them that is, you know, therapeutic and healthy, and how the death industry in America is really fucked up and doesn't really allow for that because it puts a lot of distance between us and our dead, when in reality, like, that's just a part of life, and that's something that we should be more accepting and not quite so reluctant about.
Yeah.
So I had some deep thoughts.
I think there is like a lot of books I could choose for this because I think most really good books make you think deeply about some aspect of life. But I went with Homegoing by Yad Jesse because I feel like this book was like super hyped and talked about last year, but I haven't really heard it mentioned much recently at all. And I really loved it, and I think that it really gave me a deeper perspective on slavery, and how I think in America we get like a very sugar-coated
right
version of slavery, and so it really put into perspective how awful it was, and also talked about like how it affected Africa and the people still in Africa as well, which is something that
we don't hear about.
We don't hear about at all here in America. And so it really opened my eyes to a lot of aspects of slavery that I hadn't really thought of before.
Yeah. And the last question is The Teardown, a book with a bittersweet ending.
And I said The Shock of the Fall by Nathan Filer. This book is about a man who's struggling with his mental illness, and I think the ending was very appropriate and very realistic, and it was very hopeful.
It was.
So I think it was kind of bittersweet, because of course you can't just be like, oh, you're cured.
Right, everything's great now.
Everyone lived happily ever after, but, you know, he's like in a good place at the end, and so it's a very hopeful ending where you think like, he's gonna get through this.
Right.
So I thought it was amazing. Also, the first year we had our channel, we would not shut the fuck up about this book.
You have to read that book. It's so good.
So good, and I feel like we don't mention it as much anymore because we've read a lot of other amazing books since then too. But goddamn, this is so good.
And I feel like that's actually like a really good representation of mental illness. Like I feel like that's a very fair and honest depiction of mental illness, because I've read a lot of books where mental illness is either really romanticized or really villainized. And I think that Shock of the Fall is very realistic. Like I think that in my experience in working with mental illness, like I've seen many accounts similar to that. And I think that it does a lot of justice when it talks about the honest struggles of like good people dealing with this horrible illness where your own brain turns against you. So please read that book. It's very good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
So that is our campfire.
I haven't talked about that.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, I'm a selfish bitch.
I said Year of Wonders, a novel of the plague by Geraldine Brooks. This book was, I wasn't sure what to expect because I had really heard a lot of things about Geraldine Brooks and she'd been really hyped, and so I was like, well, I hope that I don't hate her books now. And then also, I have like a love-hate relationship with historical fiction, because sometimes I feel like it's really awesome and then sometimes it's real hokey.
Yeah, I agree.
So I was nervous. But that book was actually really, really good, and I feel like the ending was bittersweet because this village, there were some survivors of their ordeal, but then also, and they ended up saving the people around them, because what they did was they quarantined themselves in this village because there were people who had the plague in the village. So they said, well, we're going to quarantine ourselves and everyone who's here needs to stay here because we don't want to take plague seeds to our, you know, friends and loved ones. And so they ended up saving their friends and loved ones and kind of earning the respect of, you know, the governing bodies in their area and, you know, the surrounding towns. But they lost, and the people who were there learned a lot about themselves and blah, 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 but they lost most of their friends and family.
Right.
And so it was incredibly bittersweet, but it was a very good book. I feel like it was very well written.
I'll have to put up, like, spoiler alert before we talk about both of these, because we both
like
totally ruined the
endings
endings of both these books, but
it's fine. But yeah, so I mean, it tells you to talk about the ending, so you know. But yeah, so I'm excited to read more from Geraldine Brooks now, because I feel like I had a really good introduction to her work. So I have some other, I think 2 other books of hers that I am excited to read now.
Yeah, I had never heard of her before, I don't think, but when you talked about her, there was like several people who were like, oh, I love Geraldine Brooks.
I had heard of her before, and I had heard like nothing but good things, but like, I'm weird, and sometimes when people are like, oh, I love this person, I'm like, So I was really nervous.
I'm kind of like that too, because like, And someone commented this on our, I think our Booktubeathon wrap up, but about the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. They were like, I really wanted to hate that book because it was so hyped, and I was like kind of the same way, where I was like,
what's wrong with this book?
This surely isn't as great as everyone says it is, but it was really fucking good.
Oh man, it was good. I fucking love that book. But yeah, so that is our Campfire book tag.
Yes.
Words.
So yeah, let us know what you thought about the books we talked about.
Yeah.
Any thoughts? This beer is fucking delicious.
God damn, this beer is good.
It really tastes like that pumpkin fluff stuff to me.
It really does.
If you've ever had that dessert where you like dip graham crackers or something and it's
I
like
make
pumpkin.
a pie that's basically that dessert.
It's like pumpkin mixed with whipped cream.
The way I make it is like pumpkin, French vanilla pudding mix.
Oh yeah.
Whipped cream, and then pumpkin pie spice and some cinnamon.
Yeah, and it's so good. And this tastes
just like
that to me. It's really good.
It is so delightful.
Yeah. There'll be some links below where you can find us other places on the internet.
And if you're not already subscribed to the restricted section, you should do it.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.